Unaware she owns the company he works for, rich husband and his mistress invited his pregnant ex-wife. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because stories like this remind us that the truth always finds its way to the light. The invitation had arrived 3 days ago. Cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing that screamed wealth and mockery in equal measure. You are cordially invited to the annual Westridge Industries Gala. At the bottom, in handwriting she recognized too well, Marcus had scrawled, "Thought you might enjoy seeing how real success looks. Bring a date if you can find one." Sarah Chen stood in the bathroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel, staring at her reflection while her hands trembled against the marble countertop. 6 months pregnant, wearing a champagne-colored dress that had cost more than Marcus ever knew she had, she looked nothing like the woman he'd abandoned. Her hair, once kept long because Marcus preferred it that way, now fell in an elegant bob that framed her face. Her makeup was flawless, applied by professionals who didn't know they were painting war paint on a warrior. Through the bathroom door, she could hear the string quartet playing something classical and expensive. She could hear laughter, the clink of crystal, the sound of people who believed they'd already won at life. And somewhere out there, in that sea of self-congratulation, was Marcus. Marcus Chen, the man who'd promised her forever and delivered 6 years before walking away. Marcus, who'd left her crying on their anniversary because he'd found someone who understood ambition. Marcus, who worked as senior director of operations at Westridge Industries and had no idea that the company belonged to Sarah's family trust. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant, James. "The board is seated. Your mother wants to know if you're ready." Also, Marcus just arrived with Felicity Zhao. They're holding court near the bar. Sarah's jaw clenched. Felicity Zhao, 26 years old, worked in marketing, all legs and confidence and cruel smiles. The woman Marcus had cheated with, moved in with, flaunted at every opportunity like a trophy he'd won by destroying someone else's life. They'd sent her the invitation together. She was sure of it. A joint cruelty. A shared joke about the pregnant ex-wife who'd been too boring, too focused on starting a family to be worth keeping. What they didn't know was that starting a family had been code for managing a multi-billion-dollar empire while pretending to be a stay-at-home wife, because Marcus's ego couldn't handle the truth. Sarah took one last look in the mirror. Her father had died 2 years ago, leaving her and her mother a portfolio of companies that included tech firms, real estate developments, and manufacturing plants across 3 continents. Westridge Industries, where Marcus had built his career, where he'd climbed the ladder with networking and charm, where Felicity had likely slept her way into enough information to make herself seem valuable. That was her family's oldest holding, founded by her grandfather in 1962. She'd been on the board since she was 23, hidden behind lawyers and proxy votes because her father had wanted her to live a normal life first, build a family, understand what matters. Well, she'd tried. And Marcus had shown her exactly what mattered to him. Not her. Not their unborn child who kicked against her ribs right now, reminding her why she was doing this. Just himself. His image. His success that he thought he'd earned alone. Sarah straightened, smoothed her dress over her belly, and walked out of the bathroom. The ballroom opened before her like a stage, all glittering chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 500 people in evening wear, the elite of the business world, gathered to celebrate another year of Westridge's success. She scanned the crowd and found Marcus immediately. He stood near the bar in a black tuxedo, his arm around Felicity's waist. Felicity wore red, scarlet, bold, the color of someone who wanted to be seen, to be envied. They were laughing with a group of executives, Marcus gesturing animatedly as he told some story that had everyone nodding and chuckling. He hadn't seen her yet. Good. Sarah moved through the crowd like a ghost, accepting polite nods from people who didn't know who she was. Not yet. She picked up a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter and positioned herself near one of the marble columns where she could watch Marcus without being obvious. She needed to see him comfortable, confident, king of his small world before she took it away. Not out of cruelty, she told herself. Out of necessity. The anonymous tip she'd received last month had confirmed what she'd suspected. Marcus and Felicity had been using their positions to embezzle funds through a series of shell companies and false vendor contracts. Small amounts at first, then growing bolder. Over 18 months, they'd stolen nearly $2 million from Westridge while pretending to be model employees. Sarah had spent 3 weeks having forensic accountants trace every transaction, document every theft, build a case that would stand up in any court. She'd wanted to handle it quietly, professionally, let the lawyers deal with it. But then the invitation had arrived with Marcus's mocking note. And something inside her that had been broken and bleeding since the day he left had crystallized into something harder. Colder. If Marcus wanted to humiliate her publicly, she'd give him a show he'd never forget. A woman in an elegant navy suit approached Sarah, smiling warmly. She was in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes. "You must be Sarah Chen." "I'm Margaret Liu, head of the board. Your mother said you'd be here tonight." Sarah shook her hand, grateful for the steadying presence. "Miss Liu, thank you for arranging everything. Are you sure you want to do this?" Margaret asked quietly, her expression concerned. "We could handle the terminations privately. You don't have to put yourself through this." Sarah looked past Margaret to where Marcus was now kissing Felicity's temple, his hand possessively on her lower back, the same way he used to touch Sarah when they were happy, when she'd believed in him. "Yes," Sarah said softly. "I need to do this." Margaret studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Your father would understand. He always said that leading meant making the hard choices, even when they hurt." She paused. "Especially when they hurt." Before Sarah could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and a man in an impeccable suit stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom. Dennis Wong, the VP of Communications, all smiles and corporate polish. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Westridge Industries' 62nd annual gala." The crowd applauded politely. Dennis continued, launching into the standard speech about company values, record profits, exciting expansions. Sarah barely heard it. Her focus was on Marcus, who had turned toward the stage, still holding Felicity close. He looked so proud, so certain of his place in this world. Felicity whispered something in his ear, and he grinned, nodding. Sarah's free hand moved unconsciously to her belly, where her daughter, because she knew it was a daughter, the ultrasound had confirmed it, was doing somersaults. She'd named her already, in her head. Lily. After Sarah's grandmother, who'd taught her that strength wasn't about never falling down. It was about always getting back up. And now, Dennis announced, his voice rising with practiced enthusiasm, "I'm thrilled to introduce the man who's been instrumental in our operational excellence this year. His innovative strategies have increased efficiency by 30% and saved the company over $5 million. Please join me in welcoming to the stage our Senior Director of Operations, Marcus Chen." The ballroom erupted in applause. Marcus handed his drink to Felicity, kissed her cheek, and strode toward the stage with the confidence of a man who believed he deserved everything he was receiving. He climbed the steps, shook Dennis's hand, and took the microphone. Thank you so much," Marcus began, his voice smooth and warm. "This really is an honor. When I joined Westridge 6 years ago, I was just a junior analyst with big dreams and a lot to learn." Sarah's stomach turned. She'd been the one supporting him then, working 60-hour weeks managing her family's properties while pretending to be a receptionist at a dental office so Marcus wouldn't feel emasculated by her success. "I've been fortunate to work with incredible people," Marcus continued. "People who challenged me, supported me, believed in my vision." His eyes found Felicity in the crowd. "And I'm especially grateful to have someone by my side who shares my passion for excellence." Felicity beamed, blowing him a kiss. Several people in the crowd chuckled, charmed by the display. Sarah felt her nails dig into her palm. Marcus kept talking, spinning a narrative about hard work and dedication and teamwork that omitted the part where he'd built his success on stolen money and a wife's hidden support. He spoke for 5 minutes, hitting all the right notes. Humble, yet confident. Appreciative, yet ambitious. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. He returned the microphone to Dennis and descended the stage, immediately engulfed by well-wishers and people eager to network with the rising star. Sarah watched Felicity slip through the crowd to meet him, watched them embrace like conquering heroes, watched colleagues pat Marcus on the back and toast his success. If you're loving this story so far, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Drop your city in the comments, and let's see where everyone's watching from. Margaret appeared at Sarah's elbow. We're ready when you are. Sarah nodded. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady now. The trembling had stopped. Let's do it. Margaret signaled to Dennis, who was back at the microphone. He cleared his throat, and the room quieted again. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more very special announcement tonight. Marcus was still surrounded by people, basking in attention. He wasn't paying attention to the stage anymore. Dennis continued, his tone shifting to something more solemn. As many of you know, Westridge Industries has been family-owned and operated since its founding in 1962. 2 years ago, we lost our chairman, David Chen, a visionary leader and beloved patriarch. The room went respectfully quiet. Marcus's expression sobered slightly. He'd met Sarah's father twice, at their wedding and at one awkward dinner where David had sized Marcus up and later told Sarah, "He's charming, sweetheart, but watch his eyes when he thinks no one's looking." She should have listened. Tonight, Dennis said, we're honored to introduce the person who will be leading Westridge into its next chapter. She has been working behind the scenes for years, preparing for this moment. Please welcome to the stage the new CEO and majority shareholder of Westridge Industries, Sarah Chen. The silence that fell over the ballroom was deafening. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Then heads started turning, scanning the crowd, looking for her. Sarah handed her glass to a stunned waiter and began walking toward the stage. Every step echoed in the cavernous space. People parted before her like a wave, their faces registering shock, confusion, recognition. She kept her eyes forward, her chin up, her spine straight. She didn't look at Marcus. Not yet. She climbed the stairs, accepted the microphone from Dennis, whose hand was shaking slightly, and turned to face the crowd. The spotlight hit her full force, and for a moment, she was blind. Then her eyes adjusted, and she saw them. Marcus, frozen in place, his face the color of chalk. Felicity, her mouth open in a perfect O of disbelief, her hand clutching Marcus's arm. The colleagues who'd been celebrating with them seconds ago were now backing away slowly, instinctively, sensing the change in atmosphere like animals before an earthquake. Sarah smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a forgiving smile. A smile that said, "Now you know what it feels like to be blindsided." Good evening, she said, her voice amplified and steady. I'm Sarah Chen, and we need to talk. The ballroom remained frozen, suspended in a moment of collective shock that felt like drowning. Sarah could see her reflection in the wall of windows behind the crowd, a solitary figure on stage, backlit and commanding. She looked powerful. She looked untouchable. She looked nothing like the woman Marcus had left crying on their bedroom floor while he packed his bags and told her she'd let herself go. Funny how perspective changed everything. Some of you know me, Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. Most of you don't. And one person in this room thought he knew me better than anyone. She let her gaze drift across the crowd until it landed on Marcus. He stood rigid, Felicity still clutching his arm, both of them looking like statues carved from pure panic. My father, David Chen, founded Westridge Industries 62 years ago in a garage in Queens. He built it from nothing, through decades of 18-hour days and sacrifices that I didn't fully understand until I became an adult. Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her belly, a gesture that several people in the crowd noticed, their expressions shifting from shock to something more complex. Sympathy. Understanding. My father taught me that business isn't just about profit margins and quarterly reports. It's about integrity. It's about creating something that matters, something that employs families, supports communities, changes lives. She paused, letting the words settle. He also taught me that when someone betrays your trust, you don't just fire them. You make sure everyone understands why, so that the cancer doesn't spread. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones were coming out now, people recording, texting, the news spreading in real time across social media and business networks. Marcus's face had gone from pale to flushed, red creeping up his neck. Felicity had released his arm and was backing away slowly, her survival instincts finally kicking in. Sarah gestured to the large screen behind her, which suddenly flickered to life. For the past 18 months, Westridge Industries has been experiencing what appeared to be minor accounting discrepancies. Small amounts, never enough to trigger major alarms. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, attributed to vendor overcharges or administrative errors. The screen displayed a spreadsheet, rows of transactions highlighted in red. 3 weeks ago, I hired a forensic accounting team to investigate. What they found was a systematic embezzlement scheme involving false vendor contracts, inflated expense reports, and funds being diverted to offshore accounts. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Sarah saw several board members nodding, their expressions grim. They'd been briefed earlier, but hearing it laid out publicly made it real. Undeniable. The total amount stolen, $2.3 million. The screen changed, showing bank transfers, shell company registrations, email chains. The perpetrators created a network of fake companies with legitimate-sounding names. Chenjiao Consulting, Innovative Solutions LLC, Premier Business Services. They approved contracts with these fake vendors, paid them for services never rendered, and transferred the money through a series of accounts designed to obscure the trail. Sarah's voice remained steady, clinical, but inside she was burning. Every document she showed represented a moment Marcus had looked her in the eye and lied. Every transaction was a dinner where he'd complained about money being tight while he was stealing from her family's company. It was clever, Sarah admitted. They knew the systems. They understood the approval processes. They were careful to stay under the thresholds that would trigger automatic audits. She clicked to the next slide, and Marcus's face appeared on the screen. A professional headshot from the company directory. Next to it, Felicity Zhao's picture. Under each photo, a list of transactions they'd personally approved or processed. Unfortunately for them, Sarah said, her voice hardening, clever isn't enough when you're stealing from a company whose owner has unlimited resources and a personal stake in finding the truth. Marcus finally found his voice. Sarah, this is insane. I don't know what. Don't. The single word cracked across the ballroom like a gunshot. Sarah's eyes locked on his, and the fury she'd been controlling for weeks blazed through. Don't you dare speak. Don't you dare try to explain or charm your way out of this like you've charmed your way through everything else. Security guards were moving through the crowd now, positioning themselves near Marcus and Felicity. Sarah had arranged this part carefully with Margaret and the head of security. Everything was being documented, witnessed, recorded. Marcus Chen, Sarah said, her voice formal now, legal, you joined Westridge Industries 6 years ago as a junior analyst. You were promoted 4 times, each promotion accompanied by raises and bonuses that totaled over $800,000 in compensation during your tenure. Marcus's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. What I didn't tell you when we were married, Sarah continued, and she saw the moment the crowd realized this was personal, saw the collective intake of breath, was that every promotion you received was approved by me, Every raise you celebrated was signed off by me. Every success you thought you'd earned through your own merit was made possible because I loved you and wanted to see you happy. Tears threatened, but Sarah forced them back. Not now. Not here. Not for him. I sat on this company's board since I was 23 years old. I managed our family's entire portfolio while you thought I was a receptionist at a dental office. I supported your career while pretending to be less than I was, because your ego, your fragile, pathetic ego, couldn't handle having a wife who was more successful than you. The ballroom was dead silent now. People weren't just shocked anymore. They were riveted, horrified, unable to look away from the car crash unfolding before them. And when I got pregnant, Sarah's voice broke slightly, just for a moment, when I told you we were going to have a baby, that I wanted to finally be honest with you about who I really was, what my family actually did. You told me I was suffocating you. You told me you needed someone who understood ambition. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You left me for her. Sarah pointed at Felicity, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. For a woman who helped you steal from my family's company, who falsified documents while sitting across from me at our dining room table, eating food I cooked, drinking wine I poured, pretending to be my friend. I never. Felicity started, but Sarah cut her off. HR records show you visited Marcus in his office 73 times in 6 months. Security footage shows you leaving together after hours on 42 occasions. Email records show conversations where you discussed how to structure the fake contracts to avoid detection. Sarah's smile was cold as ice. You're not just a mistress, Felicity. You're an accomplice. 2 security guards reached Marcus and Felicity. Marcus tried to pull away, but the guards held firm. You can't do this, Marcus said, desperation cracking his voice. I'll sue. I'll fight this. You can't just. I can do whatever I want, Sarah said quietly. I own this company. Every brick, every contract, every computer you used to steal from me. And I have evidence that will stand up in any court in the country. She nodded to Margaret, who stepped forward with 2 thick manila envelopes. Marcus Chen, Felicity Zhao, you are hereby terminated for cause, effective immediately. These envelopes contain documentation of your theft, copies of which have been forwarded to the district attorney's office. You have 15 minutes to collect personal belongings under escort. Your access to all company systems has been revoked, and your final paychecks will be withheld pending resolution of civil and criminal proceedings. Marcus's knees buckled slightly. One of the security guards steadied him. Sarah, please, he whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but this will destroy me. Please. Sarah looked down at him from the stage. This man she'd loved, this man who'd held her on their wedding day and promised her the world, and she felt nothing. Not anger anymore, not pain, just a vast emptiness where her love for him used to live. You destroyed yourself, Marcus. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. She signaled to security, and they began escorting Marcus and Felicity toward the exits. The crowd parted in silence, people backing away like they were contagious. Marcus tried to catch Sarah's eye one more time, but she'd already turned away, addressing the remaining guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to what should have been a celebration. But I want to be clear about the kind of company Westridge will be moving forward. She could hear Felicity sobbing as security led her away, could hear Marcus trying to argue with the guards. The sound faded as they reached the exit, and then they were gone. Sarah took a breath. Integrity isn't optional. It's not something we aspire to. It's something we demand. And that standard applies to everyone, regardless of position or relationship. She looked out at the sea of faces, saw respect dawning in some, wariness in others, fear in a few who probably had their own secrets to hide. If anyone else in this organization has been engaging in unethical behavior, I'm giving you one chance to come forward voluntarily. We will investigate, we will audit, and we will find the truth. But those who come forward honestly will be treated with more consideration than those we have to hunt down. Silence. Then, slowly, a few people began nodding. Westridge Industries was built on hard work and honest business. That's what it will return to. If you can't meet that standard, there's the door. Sarah set down the microphone and walked off the stage. Her legs felt like jelly, but she kept moving, kept her head high. People reached out to shake her hand as she passed, murmuring words of support, respect, even admiration. A younger woman from accounting grabbed her arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Marcus propositioned me last year, and when I refused, he had me demoted. Thank you for showing us we don't have to just take it." Sarah squeezed her hand, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She made it to the lobby before her composure finally cracked. Margaret was there, waiting, and she wrapped Sarah in a fierce hug. "You were magnificent," Margaret said quietly. "Your father would be so proud." Sarah let herself cry then, just for a minute, just enough to release the pressure that had been building in her chest. Then she pulled back, wiped her eyes, and straightened her shoulders. "I need to go home. My daughter is kicking, and I think she's telling me we're done with this place for tonight." Margaret smiled. "Go. I'll handle the rest of the evening. The vultures will want statements, but I'll keep them at bay." Sarah nodded gratefully and headed for the exit. Her driver was waiting, the car running, and she slid into the back seat with relief. "Home, Mrs. Chen?" the driver asked. "Home," Sarah confirmed. "And please, call me Sarah." As the car pulled away from the hotel, Sarah looked back at the glittering building one last time. Through the windows, she could see the gala continuing, people clustering in groups, probably dissecting what they'd just witnessed, spreading the story that would be on every business blog and news site by morning. She wondered if Marcus was sitting in a police station yet, or if he'd managed to lawyer up fast enough to avoid arrest tonight. She wondered if Felicity was crying to her parents, trying to spin the story, looking for sympathy she wouldn't find. Then she stopped wondering. They weren't her problem anymore. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "The board is ecstatic. Also, you're all over Twitter. #girlboss is trending. Call me when you can." Sarah smiled despite herself and typed back, "Going home to see my daughter. Talk tomorrow. Love you." Another text, this one from an unknown number. "This is Amanda from NY Times Business. Would love to interview you. Will pay for exclusive." Sarah deleted it. Then another, "Marcus here. Please. We need to talk. I can explain." She blocked the number without responding. By the time the car reached her apartment building, a modern high-rise in Chelsea with a doorman and security that actually did their jobs, Sarah was exhausted. She thanked the driver, took the elevator to the 15th floor, and unlocked her door to find her mother's housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, waiting in the living room. "How did it go, mija?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked, her kind eyes full of concern. "It went exactly as planned," Sarah said, kicking off her heels and immediately feeling 3 inches shorter and infinitely more comfortable. "Where is she?" "Sleeping like an angel. She ate all her vegetables tonight and only tried to flush her toys down the toilet twice." Sarah laughed, a real laugh, and felt something in her chest loosen. "That's my girl." She walked quietly to the nursery, a soft yellow room filled with books and stuffed animals, and a rocking chair her father had built before he died. In the crib, her daughter Emma, 3 years old with Sarah's dark hair and a stubborn chin that was all Marcus, whether Sarah wanted to admit it or not, slept peacefully. Sarah stood there watching her breathe. This tiny person who had nothing to do with corporate revenge, or embezzlement schemes, or public humiliations. Emma was innocent, perfect, everything good that had come from the disaster of Sarah's marriage. "Mama did something tonight," Sarah whispered, reaching down to gently touch Emma's hair. "Something scary and hard. I hope someday you'll understand why. I hope someday you'll be proud of me for standing up, even when it hurt." Emma shifted in her sleep, her little hand curling around her favorite stuffed bunny. Sarah stood there for another moment, letting the peace of the nursery wash away the last remnants of the evening's chaos. Then she went to her own room, changed into pajamas, and climbed into bed. Her phone was still buzzing with notifications, messages, calls, but she put it on silent and set it face down on the nightstand. Tomorrow, she would deal with the fallout, the legal proceedings, the media circus. Tomorrow, she would be CEO Sarah Chen, powerful and untouchable. Tonight, she was just Sarah, a single mother who was 6 months pregnant with her second child, exhausted and hollow, and wondering if revenge really was supposed to feel this empty. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "We're going to be okay," she whispered into the darkness. "Your sister is going to teach you how to be strong, and I'm going to teach you both that the truth matters more than pride." The baby kicked again, as if in agreement, and Sarah closed her eyes. Sleep came surprisingly fast, dreamless and deep. And when she woke in the morning to Emma climbing into her bed, chattering about pancakes and cartoons, Sarah realized something. She did feel lighter. Not because of what she'd done to Marcus, but because she'd finally stopped carrying his lies. She'd told the truth. And the truth, painful as it was, had set her free. The media storm hit exactly as Sarah had anticipated, though the intensity still caught her off guard. By 8 a.m., her phone had 247 unread messages, 83 missed calls, and her name was trending on 4 different social media platforms. She sat at her kitchen table in her robe, Emma eating cereal beside her while cartoons played in the background, scrolling through headlines that ranged from supportive to sensational. CEO exposes ex-husband's embezzlement in dramatic public reveal. Pregnant billionaire destroys cheating husband. At company gala, Sarah Chen's power move. Justice or revenge? Westridge Industries CEO makes statement about integrity with public firing. Some articles praised her courage. Others questioned her methods, suggesting she'd been too emotional, too personal, that private termination would have been more professional. One particularly nasty op-ed called her vindictive and suggested that pregnant women shouldn't be making major business decisions because of hormonal instability. Sarah had to laugh at that one. She'd made every major decision for Westridge while pregnant with Emma, and the company's profits had increased by 32%. "Mama, why are you on the TV?" Emma asked, pointing at the small kitchen television where a morning news show was displaying the now viral video of Sarah's speech. "Because Mama had to do something important at work," Sarah explained, muting the television. "Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices." "Like eating vegetables?" Emma asked seriously. "Exactly like eating vegetables," Sarah agreed, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Her phone rang again. This time it was Margaret Liu, so Sarah answered. "Good morning," Sarah said. "Have you seen the news?" Margaret asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "I've seen enough. The board wants to release a statement supporting your actions. We also have 3 lawyers from Marcus's corner threatening lawsuits for defamation, wrongful termination, and public humiliation." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Let them threaten. We have documentation of everything. He can't sue his way out of fraud." "The Dawes office called," Margaret continued. "They're formally opening an investigation. They want to meet with you this afternoon to go over evidence. They're also asking if you want to pursue charges, or if you'd prefer to handle it as a civil matter." Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. Criminal charges meant media attention, trials, years of Marcus being in her life through legal proceedings. Civil matters were faster, cleaner, less public, but also sent a weaker message. "What do you think?" Sarah asked. Margaret sighed. "Professionally? Criminal charges set a precedent. They tell everyone that stealing from this company will destroy your life, not just your career. But personally? I'm a mother too, Sarah. I know what it's like to want to protect your children from ugliness." Sarah looked at Emma, oblivious and innocent, singing along to her cartoon. I'll meet with the Da, Sarah decided. But I want options. I want to know what a plea bargain would look like if Marcus cooperates, what restitution might look like, what happens to Felicity. I'll arrange the meeting, Margaret said. Also, you should know that 17 employees have come forward since last night. Some with ethics complaints about other executives, some just to say they knew something was wrong and were afraid to speak up. You opened a door, Sarah. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. Good. That's good. Set up a confidential reporting system. Hire an outside firm to investigate every claim thoroughly. I don't care how high up it goes or who's implicated. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Consider it done. Oh, and one more thing, Margaret's voice shifted, becoming gentler. Your mother called. She says you're not answering her calls and she's worried. She's also very proud, but mostly worried. Sarah smiled despite everything. I'll call her. Thanks, Margaret. After hanging up, Sarah got Emma ready for preschool. Her daughter chattered the entire time about a classmate's birthday party and whether Sarah could make cupcakes shaped like unicorns. It was beautifully, blissfully normal. A reminder that life continued beyond corporate drama and public revelations. Sarah dropped Emma at preschool, endured the stares and whispers from other parents who'd clearly seen the news, and drove to her mother's brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Victoria Chen opened the door before Sarah could knock, pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace that smelled like jasmine and home. You terrified me, Victoria said, holding Sarah at arm's length to examine her. I knew what you were planning, but seeing it actually happen, seeing you up there facing him down. I'm okay, Mom, Sarah said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. They settled in Victoria's sun-filled kitchen, tea steeping between them. Victoria had been running the family businesses alongside Sarah's father for 40 years before his death. She'd taught Sarah everything about negotiation, about reading people, about knowing when to be gentle and when to be ruthless. Your father would have handled it differently, Victoria said carefully. He would have had Marcus arrested quietly, kept it all behind closed doors. I know, Sarah said. But he also taught you to trust your instincts, to lead in your own way. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. And sometimes the new way is better than the old way. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Was I wrong? Everyone's saying I was too emotional, too personal, that I let my feelings cloud my judgment. Did you lie about anything? Victoria asked. No. Did you exaggerate or distort the facts? No. Did Marcus actually steal from the company? Yes. Victoria nodded. Then you weren't wrong. You were honest. And if people are uncomfortable with that, that's their problem, not yours. She paused. Though I do think you should talk to someone, a therapist, not because you did anything wrong, but because carrying all of this alone will eat you alive. Sarah knew her mother was right. The hollow feeling that had settled in her chest after the gala hadn't gone away. Revenge hadn't healed her. Justice hadn't healed her. She'd expected to feel vindicated, powerful, free. Instead, she just felt tired. I'll make an appointment, Sarah promised. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number, another journalist probably. But when she looked at the screen, her blood ran cold. It was a text from Marcus's mother, Linda Chen. Sarah, please. Marcus is devastated. He made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But he's still Emma's father. Can we talk? Please? Sarah showed the text to her mother. Victoria's expression hardened. Linda Chen has some nerve. She's Emma's grandmother, Sarah said quietly. And whatever Marcus did, Emma shouldn't lose her entire paternal family. That's generous of you, considering Marcus lost Emma when he walked out on you while you were pregnant. Sarah couldn't argue with that. But she also knew that anger and punishment, justified as they might be, could become their own kind of prison. She'd spent 6 months being angry. Maybe it was time for something else. She texted back, "I need time. Not ready to talk yet. But Emma can still see you if you want. Supervised visits through my lawyer." The response came quickly, "Thank you. I'm so sorry, Sarah. For everything. I raised him to be better than this." Sarah didn't respond to that. She couldn't absolve Linda for her son's choices, but she could acknowledge that parents sometimes did their best and still ended up with broken children. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings. Sarah met with the DA's office, walked them through years of evidence, and listened as they explained the potential charges: grand larceny, wire fraud, falsifying business records. Marcus could face 10 to 15 years if convict continue 526 Pima on all counts. Felicity, slightly less, because her involvement, while significant, was secondary to Marcus's planning. "What about a plea bargain?" Sarah asked. The assistant DA, a sharp woman named Jennifer Rodriguez, leaned back in her chair. "If he cooperates fully, provides testimony about others potentially involved, and agrees to full restitution plus penalties, we might consider reducing charges." "But Mrs. Chen, people like your ex-husband rarely take responsibility until they have no other choice." "I know," Sarah said quietly. "But I have to at least offer the option. For my daughter's sake, if nothing else." Jennifer nodded with understanding. "We'll reach out to his attorney. But the investigation proceeds either way." That evening, Sarah attended an emergency board meeting at Westridge headquarters. The conference room was packed with board members, senior executives, and legal counsel. Everyone stood when she entered, a show of respect that still felt foreign to Sarah, even though she'd technically held this power for 2 years. "Let's get to it," Sarah said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "What's the damage?" Marcus's division head, a nervous man named Robert Park, spoke first. "We've identified approximately 40 contracts that appear suspicious. Total exposure could be as high as $4 million if all of them prove fraudulent." Sarah's stomach dropped. $4 million? I thought it was 2.3. "That was what we confirmed in the initial audit," Margaret explained. "But now that people know we're looking, more irregularities are coming to light. Marcus was apparently running this scheme longer than we realized." "Jesus," Sarah breathed. "What else?" 3 other employees have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation," the head of HR reported. "All in Marcus's department, all potentially involved in approving fraudulent paperwork. Media requests are through the roof," the communications director added. "Everyone wants an interview, exclusive access." Your response to the criticism. "What criticism?" Sarah asked, though she knew. "Some analysts are saying you handled it unprofessionally, that you should have terminated Marcus privately and let the legal system handle the public aspect. There are questions about whether you're stable enough to lead a company while dealing with personal trauma." Sarah's hands clenched under the table. "And what do our shareholders think?" Stock price jumped 8% today. The CFO reported with a slight smile. "Apparently, the market likes decisive leadership and transparency. We've also had 4 major clients reach out to reaffirm their contracts, specifically mentioning their appreciation for our integrity standards." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. "So the company is actually stronger now?" "Much stronger," Margaret confirmed. "You did what needed to be done, Sarah, and you did it in a way that sent a message to everyone. Employees, clients, competitors, investors. Westridge doesn't tolerate corruption, no matter who's involved." The meeting continued for 2 more hours, addressing security protocols, internal investigation procedures, and communications strategy. By the time Sarah got home, it was past Emma's bedtime. Mrs. Rodriguez met her at the door, reporting that Emma had asked about her 17 times and finally fallen asleep watching for Sarah through the window. Sarah's heart broke a little. She'd been so focused on running a company, on seeking justice, on managing crisis after crisis, that she'd neglected the most important thing, being present for her daughter. She tiptoed into Emma's room, carefully lifting her sleeping daughter and carrying her to bed properly. Emma stirred, blinking sleepily. "Mama, are you famous now?" Sarah laughed softly. "Not famous, baby, just busy. Mrs. Rodriguez says you're on TV because you're a hero. Are you a hero?" Sarah thought about that. Was she a hero? Or was she just a woman who'd been hurt and had the resources to hurt back? "I think I'm just someone who tried to do the right thing," Sarah said carefully. "Even when it was hard." "That's what heroes do," Emma said with the absolute certainty of a 3-year-old. Then she yawned and snuggled into Sarah's side. "I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby," Sarah whispered, holding her daughter close. More than anything in the world. She stayed there until Emma fell back asleep, then carefully extracted herself and went to her own room. Her phone had been buzzing steadily all evening, but she'd ignored it. Now she finally looked and found a message from her therapist, Dr. Williams, whom she'd called that afternoon. "I have an opening tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you want to talk. What you're going through is complicated, and you don't have to process it alone." Sarah scheduled the appointment. Then she scrolled through the other messages until she found one that made her pause. It was from Marcus's lawyer, Mrs. Chen. "My client would like to request a meeting. He understands he has no right to ask for your time, but he wants to apologize in person and discuss repayment terms. No recording, no legal team, just two people who used to love each other trying to find a way forward that doesn't destroy everyone. Please consider it." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to refuse, to let Marcus suffer alone in his consequences. But another part of her, the part that remembered the man he used to be before ambition and insecurity corrupted him, wondered if maybe closure required facing each other one more time. Not for his sake. For hers. She texted back. "One meeting. My lawyer's office. Next week. If he tries to manipulate me or minimize what he did, I walk out and we proceed with maximum criminal charges. Those are the terms." The response came within minutes, agreed. "Thank you, Sarah." Sarah set down her phone and placed both hands on her belly, where her second daughter was doing what felt like acrobatics. "Your sister thinks I'm a hero," Sarah told the baby. "But I'm really just trying to figure out how to be strong and kind at the same time. It's harder than I thought it would be." The baby kicked, and Sarah smiled despite everything. 2 days later, Sarah sat in Dr. Williams's office, a cozy space filled with soft furniture and warm lighting that was specifically designed to feel unthreatening. Dr. Williams, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and an impressive collection of cardigans, listened without interruption as Sarah poured out everything. The humiliation of Marcus leaving, the miscarriage, the loneliness of single pregnancy, and now the strange emptiness of vindication. "I thought I'd feel better," Sarah admitted, tears finally falling. "I thought that exposing him, watching him lose everything like I lost everything, would heal something in me. But I just feel hollow." Dr. Williams handed her a tissue. "Revenge and healing are not the same thing, Sarah. Revenge might satisfy your anger temporarily, but it doesn't address the grief underneath. You lost your marriage, your trust in someone you loved, your vision of the future you'd planned. And you went through a miscarriage while completely alone. Those wounds don't heal just because you got even." "So what do I do?" Sarah asked, her voice small. "You grieve," Dr. Williams said simply. "You let yourself feel all of it. The anger, yes, but also the sadness, the betrayal, the loneliness. You acknowledge that Marcus's actions don't define your worth, and you start building a life that isn't about him at all, good or bad." Sarah nodded, though it felt overwhelming. "I have a meeting with him next week. His lawyer says he wants to apologize." "How do you feel about that?" "Scared," Sarah admitted. "What if he says the right things? What if I feel sorry for him?" Would that be so terrible? Dr. Williams asked gently. Feeling empathy for someone who hurt you doesn't mean you're weak or that you're condoning what they did. It means you're human. Sarah sat with that for a moment. I don't want to forgive him. Then don't. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. But listening might give you the closure you're looking for. The meeting with Marcus happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in a neutral conference room at Sarah's attorney's office. Sarah arrived with her lawyer, Patricia Stone, a formidable woman who'd helped her through the divorce and now the embezzlement case. Marcus arrived with his attorney, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. His suit was rumpled, his face unshaven, his eyes red-rimmed from what Sarah suspected were sleepless nights and probably alcohol. They sat across from each other at a conference table, lawyers flanking them like seconds at a duel. Patricia had made it clear, this was not a negotiation, this was Marcus's opportunity to speak, and Sarah could leave at any moment. Marcus started to speak 3 times before any words actually came out. Sarah, I don't even know where to begin. Try the beginning, Sarah said, her voice flat. Try the part where you decided to steal from my family's company while sleeping with your coworker. He flinched. There's no excuse. I know that. But I want you to understand how it happened. Not to justify it, but because you deserve the truth. Sarah waited, her hands folded on the table, her expression neutral. When we got married, I thought I was enough for you, Marcus said quietly. I thought I could provide, be the man you needed. But the longer we were married, the more I realized how different our worlds were. Your friends, your connections, the opportunities you had access to, I felt like I was always playing catch-up. So you stole, Sarah said. No. Marcus stopped, took a breath. The stealing came later. First, I just tried to prove myself. I worked harder, longer hours. I pushed for promotions. And when I got them, when people praised me, I felt like maybe I was finally worthy of you. You were always worthy of me, Sarah said, and she meant it. Until you decided you weren't. Marcus's face crumpled. I know. God, Sarah, I know. And when Felicity started paying attention to me, making me feel important, special, I was weak. I told myself it was just networking, just friendship. But I was lying to myself. And to me, Sarah added. And to you, he agreed. By the time I realized what I was doing, I was already in too deep. The affair, the stealing, it all became this web I couldn't escape. Every time I wanted to stop, to come clean, I'd think about losing everything. My job, my reputation, you. So, I went deeper instead. Sarah felt something inside her crack slightly. Not forgiveness, exactly. But understanding. Marcus wasn't a monster. He was just a man who'd made terrible choices out of insecurity and fear. That didn't excuse what he'd done. But it made him human. You did lose everything, Sarah said quietly. Not because I exposed you, but because you chose lies over truth. You chose pride over integrity. And you chose Felicity over your family. I know, Marcus whispered, and I will regret it every day for the rest of my life. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. My attorney has worked out a repayment plan. I've liquidated everything I own, my car, my watch collection, my 401k. It's not enough to cover what I stole, but it's a start. I've also agreed to full cooperation with the Dawes office and testimony against anyone else involved. He slid the folder across the table. Sarah didn't touch it. I'm also pleading guilty to all charges, Marcus continued. My attorney advised against it, said we could fight, maybe get some charges dropped. But you deserve better than watching me drag this out in court for years. I did it. I'll take responsibility. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected, genuine remorse. Not the performance of remorse, not manipulation, but real, devastating regret. What about Emma? Sarah asked. Marcus's face crumbled completely. I don't deserve to be her father anymore. I know that. But if you'd let me, someday, when she's old enough to understand, I'd like to tell her I'm sorry. I'd like her to know that I loved her, even if I was too broken to show it. Sarah felt tears on her face and hadn't realized she was crying. She asks about you, Sarah said. She draws pictures of our family, the three of us, even though that family doesn't exist anymore. And I don't know how to explain to a 3-year-old that her father chose ambition over her. Tell her the truth, Marcus said. Tell her that her father was weak and selfish and made terrible mistakes. And tell her that you are strong enough to be both parents. Sarah stood up. The meeting was over. She'd heard what she needed to hear, but staying longer would just be reopening wounds that needed to start healing. The Da will contact you about your plea, Sarah said formally. My lawyer will handle the civil restitution. And Emma's grandmother can arrange supervised visits through Patricia's office. Thank you, Marcus said, standing as well. Sarah, I know you'll never forgive me. But I hope someday you can be happy again. You deserve that. Sarah looked at him one last time. This man who'd been her husband, her partner, her greatest betrayal. I hope you find a way to forgive yourself, Marcus. Because that's going to be harder than any prison sentence. She walked out of the conference room, out of the building, into the rain. Patricia followed, holding an umbrella. That was brave, Patricia said. That was necessary, Sarah corrected. But it's over now. Finally over. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the newly renovated Westridge Industries headquarters, cutting a ribbon while cameras flashed and employees applauded. The building had been redesigned to include a child care center, mental health resources, and an anonymous ethics hotline that connected directly to an outside firm. The board had approved Sarah's initiatives unanimously, and the company was thriving under her leadership. Marcus had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 3 for cooperation and remorse. Felicity had received 2 years. The restitution was being paid in installments, and the Da had recovered most of the stolen funds. Sarah had donated her portion to a charity supporting single mothers. Emma, now 3.5, attended the ribbon cutting in a tiny blazer that matched Sarah's, holding her mother's hand and waving at the employees like royalty. Sarah was 8.5 months pregnant now, ready to burst, but she'd insisted on being here for this moment. Her second daughter would be born into a different world than Emma had been, a world where her mother was openly powerful, where truth was valued over appearances, where mistakes had consequences but also paths to redemption. That evening, Sarah sat in her newly furnished nursery, Emma curled up beside her, reading a story about brave princesses and kind queens. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from the board, from employees, from business publications praising her leadership. But the message that mattered most was from Dr. Williams, proud of you. Remember, healing isn't linear, but you're doing the work. Sarah set down the phone and placed her hands on her belly, feeling her second daughter kick. Your sister is going to teach you how to be brave, Sarah whispered. And I'm going to teach you both that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, telling the truth, and building something better from the broken pieces. Emma looked up from the book. Mama, are you still sad about Daddy? Sarah thought about that. Was she still sad? Yes. Did that sadness define her anymore? No. Sometimes, Sarah answered honestly. But I'm also happy. Because I have you, and your sister, and work that matters. Sad and happy can live together sometimes. Emma considered this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand complex adult emotions. Like when you eat vegetables, but also ice cream? Sarah laughed, a real full laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Exactly like that, baby. Exactly like that. 2 weeks later, Sarah gave birth to her second daughter, Sophia Victoria Chen. The delivery was smooth, surrounded by her mother Emma and Mrs. Rodriguez. No husband, no father, no partner. But also no lies, no betrayal, no pretending to be less than she was. Just Sarah, powerful and vulnerable, imperfect and enough, holding her daughter and knowing that she had survived the worst and built something better from the ruins. And when Emma climbed onto the hospital bed, carefully examining her baby sister with wide eyes and gentle hands, Sarah realized that this right here was what redemption looked like. Not revenge, not justice, not vindication, just love. Messy and complicated and real. "She's perfect, Mama," Emma whispered, touching Sophia's tiny hand. "We're perfect." "Yes, we are," Sarah agreed, her heart full of something that felt remarkably like peace. "Yes, we are." If this story touched your heart, if you felt Sarah's journey and her strength, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because everyone deserves to know that betrayal doesn't define you. Your comeback does. Drop your city in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from. Until next time, remember, the truth will always find its way to the light.